Have you seen Wizards of the Coast released another survey? We've seen them for Unearthed Arcana before, sure, but this is just called the D&D Survey 2020. I'll remind you that it is mid-August at this point, so we're just getting a survey for 2020, and it seems to be, I don't really know what we're going to expect. I hear it's pretty long, I hear it has a lot of questions, and I'm hoping we can insight some stuff about the future of the hobby we all know and love by what questions they're asking. So if you want to see how I answer the survey, stay tuned. Survey says, nothing yet. We haven't filled it out. What's going on, folks? Ted from Nerd Immersion here, and let's jump over to the Wizards of the Coast website. You can see it says D&D Survey 2020. Help shape the future D&D products by taking this survey. We want to hear about the reasons you play, the reasons you DM, and the types of tools that help you in your play. We'd especially like to hear from D&D fans who may have been underrepresented historically. So that's obviously an echo of the D&D diversity article, I would assume. Have you ever played D&D? Well, that's a solid yes there. Now that only jumped us up 3%, so this is going to be a long one. What editions have you played? 3.5, 5th edition. That's all I've played. When was the last time you played these editions? Within the last week for 5th edition? Oh, more than 12 months ago for 3.5. How often do you play? Did you play D&D? In the past 12 months, more than once a week. And more than once a week, that's accurate because of the streaming and stuff. Imagine any and all barriers to playing D&D were removed. I'm really sure there's a lot of barriers other than COVID, but okay. For example, you have all the time you need and you have an available group. If you could play D&D as often as you want, how often would you play? I would play more than once a week, realistically. If I had all the time I would need, I had an available group, and it says all barriers. So I assume that means like work's not an issue, family matters and things aren't an issue, meaning that like I can still sustain all of the things I would normally do, but I just have unlimited time for Dungeons & Dragons. Hell yeah, I'd play more than once a week. Probably play. I'm already playing 2 to 3 times a week as it is. With all of that in place, if you could alleviate all those other problems, I'd probably play every day. If I could do it, I might get a little burnt out of it after a while, but with different groups and DMing and different groups of players and stuff like that, I think I could have fun with it. Which campaign settings do you prefer? Well, I do like the Forgotten Realms. I have issues with it, but I like it. I do like Ravenloft. I like Homebrew. And I really don't know much about I don't know Birthright. I know Greyhawk a little bit, but I played in Greyhawk-centric worlds, but we always played in Homebrew campaigns. I've never played Spelljammer. I know of Dragonlance from books and movies. I know of Dark Sun from people talking about it. I know of Planescape in the Ethereal, and I know of it. And I'm gonna check Eberron because I do like what I know about Eberron. I can only choose 3, so never mind. All right. What is your favorite campaign setting? Forgotten Realms, Homebrew, Ravenloft. So that's tricky, right? My only experience, honestly, with Ravenloft is Curse of Strahd, but I love Gothic horror. I love classic Universal monsters and things like that. I love horror movies. I love Castlevania, and a lot of that echoes Ravenloft. So in theory, I really, really like that. I know the Forgotten Realms very well. There's a ton of lore. There are novels, books, YouTube channels dedicated to getting you up to speed on the lore. And that's good for me because I like to be as enriched in knowledge in my own world or in a world that I'm running in. So if someone asks me a question, I might be able to spout a bunch of knowledge to them offhand, and I do enjoy that. And I also very much enjoy Homebrew. And the reason I do that is because everybody has a game they've played in. But the one thing that this doesn't take into consideration, I guess, is what about a Homebrew? I guess if it's set in Forgotten Realms, but it's Homebrew, then it's still Forgotten Realms setting. So you know what? I'm going to say I don't have a favorite campaign setting because I don't think I've had one that it blew me away. I have to play in this. I can play anywhere as long as I'm having fun. Okay. How important are the following when you play D&D? Got not important at all, slightly important, somewhat important, very important, extremely important. Characters / monsters are beautifully illustrated in the books. That's somewhat important to me. I don't necessarily need to have beautiful illustrations. I can use my own mind, but I like to have illustrations. I like to be able to, if my players are like, what are we looking at? I can show them a picture in the book and they say, oh, that's what it is. Maximizing combat performance by carefully optimizing attributes and gear. I very much enjoy that, so I'm going to say it's extremely important to me. Being a powerful hero that defeats villains and monsters. I'm going to say that's slightly important to me because I also enjoy roleplay-rich campaigns. That's something I've learned only from playing 5th edition. I had only had a 3rd edition experience, which was all min-maxing, combat was the focus, etc. I've grown to like roleplay in 5th edition. Creating my own adventures campaigns. That's somewhat important to me, I would agree. Leading the group during gameplay. This one's interesting. I'm going to say somewhat important again because I don't like leading groups, but I often find myself thrust into a leadership position in a group, whether that's because people feel like I've been playing the longest and I know more about the rules or my character knows better, but I find myself often thrust into a leadership position in parties that I don't want to be the leader in. And more often than not, I'm not playing a charismatic character and they want me to do all the talking. Well, that's fine, but I'm going to flub it because that's how it goes. So I don't have to be the leader. And in fact, every time I've tried to step back and not be the leader, no one made any decisions and the game just stalemated and stagnated because no one did anything. So I was like, okay, we'll do this. And then look, you're the leader now. Overcoming challenges with difficult decision making. I'd say that's very important. I do enjoy that, but I think that also opts into the optimizing attributes and gear because I like to, some of the decision making can be the gear you choose. Using miniatures in D&D, that's somewhat important to me. I obviously play online. I have a ton of minis and I very much enjoy using them when I get a chance to, but obviously right now we haven't been able to use them for months. Volunteering at Gen Con and similar community events, that's slightly important to me. I haven't really done it. I've done a couple like Adventure League stuff here and there, but it's not like my top priority. Bonding over a shared group experience, 100% extremely important. Creating characters with detailed personalities, quirks, and motives, also extremely important to me. Okay, how important are the following? Same scale. Helping others learn to play D&D. That is extremely important to me. I enjoy doing that. That's part of the reason why I have a YouTube channel. Not the main reason, but part of it. Creating a homebrew world and setting. I'm going to say that's very important to me. It's not the top. I've learned a lot of lessons when making my own homebrew world that I don't necessarily love doing it, but I do enjoy some aspects of it. Identifying creative ways to solve. I think that that's very important. The rule books and guides feature amazing artwork. Again, slightly important. Taking charge of the team. Slightly important. Volunteering to help run D&D meetups and similar local events at stores. That's more important. I do enjoy the local aspect, and I would gladly lend my expertise to help someone if I liked the store and I liked the vibe they were giving me. There are certain game stores that I've gone to that I just don't like the people running it, and I'd say I'm not gonna make the jump to running my own game store. I know that's a poor financial choice. Game stores don't do very well, which is sad, but that's also unfortunate because you get what you pay for, right? If there's only certain game stores out there, you've got one local, you got to go to that game store. And the people who run it may be jerks. It may not be run well. I went to pick up my Mythic Odysseys of Theros book, the limited edition cover. I went to that game store based on what they told me 6 times to pick up this book. I had to drive a half an hour to get there each time. And each time they're like, oh, it'll be in later. Oh, it'll be in later. Oh, it'll be in later. And it just kept getting delayed and delayed and delayed. And that's why the giveaway started so late, because they couldn't run it. So that's the game store I'm stuck with. And that sucks. So would I help them organize an event? Probably not. Would I help another store that was better? Absolutely. Accumulating powerful weapons, spells, and artifacts. That's only slightly important to me. My stuff doesn't have to be powerful. And again, I do enjoy min-maxing and making powerful characters. But I don't necessarily have to accumulate loot to do so. I could very much enjoy a sentimental +1 magic item or a sentimental common magic item that has a lot of use for me or my character or has become a part of that character. And that could be something I carry through the rest of the campaign and I'm fine with it. Do I like loot? Well, who doesn't? Being a part of a fun group activity, 100% extremely important. Creating elaborate backstories for my character. It used to be extremely important, but I've been burnt a lot on building really rich character backstories, multiple pages, long. I mean, I had a character who was part of a dwarven royalty. I built 10 generations of dwarven royalty, like history, and I had a whole family tree that I mapped out. And the DM didn't use any of my backstory. Maybe she was intimidated because of that. I don't know. But none of my backstory ever came into play. Researching rulebooks online to optimize. Yeah, that's very important. I like to do that in my spare time. And I'm not even kidding when I say that. Finding the perfect miniature to represent my character. I'm going to say that's somewhat important. We also live in a world where we have things like Eldritch Foundry and Dwarven Forge, and we can make our own. So that kind of makes it easier to do. Creating my own custom classes, races, NPCs. That's very important to me. I do enjoy doing that a lot. I wouldn't say it's extremely important. I do like to live within the confines of the rules, but making my own stuff is also fun. Making sure characters are as powerful as possible. That's very important to me. Resolving obstacles and encounters with sound tactics. Again, I like that. I'm going to say that's extremely important. Having a large collection of miniatures or dungeon terrain. Well, I'm going to say it's extremely important because I have one and I'm not stopping. So introducing new players to D&D, extremely important. I like to bring new people into the game. I'm not going to say that I'm the best DM out there. You guys can see a lot of that on both this channel and Nerd Immersion Plays, me DMing. But I also tend to change the way I DM for new players. And I think because of my patient nature and my sort of everyman attitude, tell it like it is, I can help people get into the game without feeling intimidated. At least that's the vibe that I feel I give off when I DM for new players. So I like to help people out to be their first DM. Or in people who have DM horror stories about like really bad games, I say, well, why don't I run a game for you? And then you can kind of see, in my opinion, what a real D&D session is like. Being fully immersed in the mindset of my character. I'm going to say it's very important. I try. Sometimes I can't get out of my own head on it, though. Chatting and interacting with a group of people. That's why we play D&D. Creating guides / podcasts to help players get started out. Well, here we are. Helping players figure out how to DM for the first time. I do enjoy that. I'm going to say that's extremely important because if people are floundering, I want to help them. And if I can do it through my channel or otherwise, I will do so. All right, now we have same scale but different setup. In your opinion, how important or unimportant are each of the following traits in a good dungeon master? Creatives, creates vivid descriptions and unique adventures. That's very important in a DM, I would agree. Flexible, adapts their campaign. I'm going to say that's arguably extremely important because players will always throw a monkey wrench in everything you do as a DM. So if you can't be flexible, while certain people may like railroads, I like people to be able to creative thinking and work with me and the other players to make stuff fun. So I think flexibility is extremely important. Fair, adjudicates the rules without favoring one player. Yeah, 100%. No one likes a game where someone's significant other, brother, sister, or someone they don't particularly like that day, piss them off, whatever, and they just take it out on them. That's not fun. I've played in games with a lot of couples. I've played in games with siblings and other, different setups. And it's never fun when like could clearly do something or another player could clearly do something, but the DM tells them they can't, and then their significant other can do it no problem. They just skate by, the rules don't apply to them. You feel slighted, and that's not fair. Fun. Well, yep, fun's extremely important. Improvisational, changes in adventure during a session, again, extremely important. In your opinion, how important or unimportant are each of the following traits in a good dungeon master? Reliable, can be trusted to be prepared, and run games when they say they will. That's extremely important. I would agree. I'll be honest, I don't prepare as much as I would like, but I feel like I have a good enough handle on the game and my players that I can spitball and improvise if need be. Competitive, builds challenging adventures or scenarios that test the player's knowledge of the rules and strong teamwork and tactics. I'm going to say that's very important. That's somewhat important. You don't have to have necessarily a strong understanding of the rules, but you want the game to be challenging to a degree. Otherwise, if it's purely roleplay, then that's fine. But if there's no challenge in the game, you don't feel a sense of accomplishment if you're not overcoming a challenge, at least in my mind. Quick-witted, keeps the action moving, rarely needing to pause. I do think that that's important because anytime you have to slow things down to look up rules or things like that, it puts the game on hold and people start to get attuned, if you will, to the game or unimmersed, and then things can very quickly unravel. Someone pulls out their phone, starts checking their phone, someone starts talking about something, a movie they saw, a video game, and you just lose the whole train, the momentum. Appropriately challenging consistently presents encounters that are challenging enough to be interesting, but not so difficult that they are discouraging to players. I'm going to say that's somewhat important. I've played in games where sometimes my players just skate through everything and there's no problem. And I've played through other games where I've been pretty hard on them. But I think if you can balance it, that's good. But you should be challenging and then not when it doesn't need to be. Consistent, can make judgment calls or house rules that apply in all situations. I say that's very important. Having a good sense of judgment is important as being a judge or an adjudicator of the rules as DM. How important or unimportant the following a good DM? Clear, speaks clearly and in a way that makes sense to understand what is happening. Exceptionally important, especially if you're playing theater of the mind. You need to illustrate with your words where things are for the players to understand it. Rules expert, has a deep understanding of the rules, able to answer any question that comes up during play. I'm going to say that's somewhat important. I try to do that myself, but sometimes I still have to look up rules. Tactically cunning, plays the monsters or cunning foes during combat encounters, especially using the knowledge of the rules. Again, somewhat important. Not everybody wants to have the monsters know what they're doing. Some people like to just run them by the book. I think this could be resolved if we had a tactics section in all of the monster stat blocks, like we did in previous edition, that tells you how the monsters act in combat, rather than just giving us a stat block and a minute amount of lore about them. Tell them, in the first round they typically do this, or they favor this, or when they get to half health they do this. That helps people, especially new players, understand how to run a creature. Lore Master has a deep understanding of the story and history of the campaign setting. That's somewhat important. You can make stuff up on the fly, and a lot of the times when you make things up on the fly, that becomes the most fun, interesting, running inside jokes of your games. Injects humor into the game, very important. I like serious games, but the humor is usually what, again, people are talking about years later. Okay, organized. Keep things organized with notes, rules, references ahead of time. I'm going to say slightly important because I don't do that. Good listener. Focuses on the players. Extremely important. Yep, definitely. Storyteller. Weaves a compelling story using spoken words, but by portraying characters with distant voices. That's slightly important. If you watch Critical Role, that's what people expect from everybody, and I don't think it needs to be. It can add immersion, sure, but all it takes is you to do a funny voice or mess up a word or an accent or something, and then the whole thing falls apart. So as long as the story is good, it doesn't necessarily you don't have to use voices, and you can just, everybody sounds just like I'm talking now, or maybe you start throwing in accents, or you raise your pitch or lower your pitch. You could do things, but you don't have to. Patient, lets the groove move at their own pace. I'm going to say that's extremely important because that's what I like to do. I let my players set their own pace. If they want to just dungeon crawl and go, room to room, let's just bang through this, fine. If they want to take 30 minutes to deliberate what they want to do, sure, it maybe doesn't make the most entertaining thing because we're streaming it, but if they're having fun and they're enjoying it, then I am getting the enjoyment of them enjoying the game I'm running. Collaborative, works with players as the game progresses. Yes, definitely. You got to work with your players' needs, people, whatever. Have I ever been a DM? Yes. Okay, here we go. Why did you start DMing? I wanted to play a new edition. I wanted to run adventures in my own world. I wanted to be a storyteller. I wanted to keep my group going. I wanted to direct the game. No one else wanted to be the DM. Accurate. And I wanted to run and direct the game. I'm going to create my own stories. That's true too. Okay. What year did you first DM? 2000 for Dungeons and Dragons? 2008? That's right. Which editions have you DM'd? 3rd and 5th. In the past 12 months, about what percentage of your overall game has been spent DMing? 85%. That sounds about right. Okay. When was the last time you DM'd a 5th edition game? 2 days ago. In the past 12 months, about what percentage of your 5th edition game has been spent DMing? 85%. Okay, hate it, dislike it, neutral, like it, love it, never done this. Okay, what do I do as a DM? Tracking initiative. I'm neutral on that. Tracking spells and ability durations. Neutral. Performing math needed to calculate attacks. Neutral. These are really dumb in my mind. All right. How much you like or dislike doing these tasks? Oh, I don't love any of that. Tracking monster hit points. Neutral. Looking up rules for characters. Neutral. Looking up rules for monsters. Neutral. Narrating scenes. Yes, like it. Adopting distinctive voices for NPCs and monsters. I'm neutral on it. Narrating, I'm really neutral on all of that. Like, in my mind, all of these things, tracking initiative, spells, hit points, looking up rules, that's just part of the game. I don't love doing it, but I don't hate it. It's how the game works. And then like narrating scenes is fun. Adopting voices, I'm neutral on it. Sometimes a lot of characters have the same voice. I try to do distinct voices for distinct NPCs, but I'm not a voice actor, so. All right, making tactical choices for monsters in combat. That I do love. Calculating experience wars. Neutral. Determining DCs for actions and checks. Neutral. Drawing maps for combat. I like it. Do I get to do it? No. Playing music or sound effects. I like it. Don't get to do it as often as I like. Improvising encounters to response to player's decision. Love doing that. Preparing box text. Hate it. Giving out treasure. Love it. Determining the appropriate check to handle an action a player wants to take. I'm neutral on it. Showing an NPC's personality or motivations. Again, neutral. Okay, we're at 42%. Okay, same scale. And here's a list of things you do as a DM between sessions. Creating and applying house rules. Neutral. Creating maps. Neutral. Creating combat encounters. Like it. Creating environments for the characters to explore. Like it. Picking treasure rewards. Love it. Balancing combat encounters using challenge rating. Hate it, because challenge rating is garbage. Determining DCs for actions and checks. I'm neutral. Creating NPCs. Like it. Creating handouts. I really say never done it, because I really don't do it. All right, between sessions, continued. Picking out miniatures to play. Love it. Picking out music. Like it. Creating or find props. I love using props if I can do it. Writing up descriptions to read during play. I'm neutral. Creating adventure scenarios. Like it. Creating your own world. Love it. Using a pre-made world. Like it. Using a pre-made adventure. Neutral. Scheduling game sessions. Dislike it. Nobody likes scheduling game sessions. All right, regardless of whether you like or dislike these tasks, which of these do you find difficult or time-consuming in a way that might make you reluctant to take them on? Creating and applying house rules, not really. I don't think they're time-consuming. Creating maps can be time-consuming. I'm gonna check that. Creating combat encounters, not so much. Environments for characters to explore. Picking treasure rewards, no. Balancing combat encounters, I just use my own system that I make up in my head as I go. Determining DCs, not so much. NPCs, miniatures, picking out music. That's time-consuming and can be difficult. I would agree with that. Writing up descriptions to read during gameplay, that can be difficult, time-consuming. Creating your own world can be difficult and time-consuming. Scheduling a game session can be difficult and time-consuming. If there was a digital tool to help you with DM tasks during play and/or between sessions, how important would it be? Each of the following be for you to consider using it. A web version is available, extremely important. A mobile app, extremely important. I mean, if we're gonna have a digital tool, it should be accessible in multiple ways. We're about halfway done, folks. Do you ever modify? Yes. Definitely modify the rules for my own game. How important to your D&D experience is modifying these rules? Well, lately, it's been extremely important. Okay. The list is a following of things you might do as a player during gameplay. Please rate how you like these tasks. Well, I don't track initiative as a player. I'm neutral on tracking my spell slots and durations. Performing the math needed, again, neutral. Tracking hit points. These are all like, this is how the game works. Why do I need to tell you if I like doing the things you're supposed to do? Like, who's like, oh, I love tracking my hit points. Come on. Really? That, like, you have to do it so you know if you're all, you know, if your character, what your character's doing. But I wouldn't say that I'm like, oh man, love taking off those hit points, love watching them go back up. It's part of the game. Looking up rules, neutral. Adopting a distinctive voice for your character, neutral. Making tactical decisions in combat, that I love. Taking notes, let's be honest, I'm neutral. Tracking treasure, I like it. Tracking experience points, neutral. What do you personally do to prepare for a D&D session? Honestly, not much. I'd love to do more, but I don't have the time. As a player, I usually just show up. Just show up with my dice and my character. Maybe some notes. As a DM, I have the best intentions, but I typically just wing it. That's pretty accurate to me. Okay, do you use any digital aids to play D&D on the tabletop? Yes, I do. D&D Beyond, definitely use that. Obviously, we're using Zoom right now a lot, and that's pretty much it to play D&D. Yeah. Oh, and I guess Twitch, because we stream it. D&D Beyond. Yeah, all right, that's it. Do you have a paid subscription to D&D Beyond? Yes, I guess, technically. Say yes. Past 12 months, how much have you spent on subscriptions? $0. Have you bought D&D official rulebooks? I have in the past. Do you also own physical prints? Absolutely. The past 12 months, how much have you spent on D&D digital books? $0. Physical D&D books in the past 12 months? I don't know what books came out. Every book that's come out in the past 12 months. I don't know, we'll call it $300. That's probably reasonable. Every book that's come out, multiple copies for giveaways. Before COVID-19 pandemic, where or how did you typically play tabletop? At home or a friend's house? And then virtual gaming with friends and family. And I'd say, just there at conventions, virtually with a store community and organized games. I'm going to put it in here. I'm going to put conventions. Because that's true. I would play at conventions. Over the past several months, where many non-essential places were temporarily closed and social distancing measures were put into place, how did you play tabletop? Virtually, with friends and family. With stores eventually reopening and the loosening of some social distancing measures, how do you think your tabletop D&D play frequency at the following locations will change? In person, with friends and family, about the same. Because it's the same group of people. We're all gonna start getting back together. Everyone's not feeling sick. We're doing temperature checks where everyone's wearing masks during the week. In person's at a friend's house, not applicable. I only play at my house. A public place, and this will be about the same with Zoom, and not applicable. Because I don't really go out to stores and play out in public. All my friends come to my house to play, and then if I'm playing online, it's the same as it was. Okay, how frequently do you personally use each of the following specifically for gameplay purposes while playing D&D in person? A DM screen. Always. Digital published adventures. Sometimes. Homebrew organization tools. I'm going to say often. Map making tools. Sometimes. Print publish adventures. Sometimes. Dry or wet erase map. Always. How frequently do you personally use each of the following? Always on the minis, never on the standees, rarely on the digital dice, always on the physical dice. How frequently do you have each of the following in D&D person? Tablet, always. Phone, always. Graph paper/pencil, always. Notebook, always. Laptop or PC, sometimes. Whiteboard and markers, sometimes. TV or monitor, never. How frequently do you use the following specifically for gameplay purposes? Digital rule sets, always. Printed rule set, always. Digital character set, always. Printed character sheets, often. How frequently do you use any of the following specifically for gameplay purposes while playing in person? Messaging app, never. Or, well, I'll say sometimes. Calendar app, never. Coloration / collaboration, sometimes. And music or app playlists, rarely. Okay. How frequently do you personally use each of the following specifically for gameplay purposes while playing D&D virtually? Dry or wet erase map? Never. DM screen? Never. I'm playing virtual. I don't need a screen. Digital publish adventures? Well, always. Homebrew creation tools? Often. Map making tools? Sometimes. Print publish adventures? Often. Miniatures? Never while I'm playing virtually. Digital dice? Sometimes. Stand depths? No. Physical dice? Yes. When they say TV or monitor, if I'm playing virtually, don't I need a monitor? Isn't that a requirement? Just like a PC is also a requirement? I guess I'll say I always use a monitor and I always have a notebook. I don't use whiteboards or graph paper. I have to have a computer to play virtually. And I never use my tablet when I'm playing virtually, but I always have my phone. How frequently do you use these when you're playing virtually? Printed rulebooks? Often. Digital rulebooks, always. Digital character sheets, always. Printed character sheets, never. Virtually calendar app, never. Sometimes Google Docs, never on a playlist, and often on the messaging app. Okay. All right. How frequently do you use the following when preparing to DM session? Dry or wet erase map? Often. I don't draw maps as much as I like. Digital publish adventures, sometimes. Digital rulebooks, often. Print, sometimes. Printed rulebooks, often. How frequently do you use the following? Prep, calendar app, none. A Google Map, always. Or Google Docs, always. Messaging app, always. Music app, playlist, rarely. Map making tools, rarely. Homebrew stuff, often. That's pretty good. Which of the following D&D game designers have you heard of? Heard of Monty Cook, Jeremy Crawford, Ed Greenwood, Jeff Grubb, Gary Gygax, Chris Perkins, Ari Salvatore. Yep. How would the following, was Keith Baker on that list? No, he wasn't. Okay. How would seeing each of the designers' names on an official product affect the likelihood that you'd buy that product? Really, not that much. I'm gonna say more likely to buy with Salvatore because I like his stuff. These guys are already putting out books. I'm neutral to them. Not a big deal. How would I identify? Male. What is my age? 34. White. Done. Okay. Well, there you go. That was about a half an hour of me filling out a survey. I'm sorry I probably lost some of you along the way, but I wanted to see. So now probably the important part, what do we think this is saying? Well, I think it's probably a good idea to canvas your group, your player base, to see. Maybe this should be something that's more quarterly or maybe twice a year, so you can get an idea of what the player base feels like maybe at the beginning of the year and the end of the year, something like that. I think I don't think anything that you answer in this survey is going to have any impact on Dungeons and Dragons in 2020. I'm going to say that up front. I think this is all stuff for plans for the future. Whatever books we're going to get this year, I think we're just going to get those books, and that's going to be it. We know we're getting Rime of the Frost Maiden in just over a month. We know there's supposed to be this White Whale mythical adventure, mythical book coming out in November that no one's said anything about. It'll probably get spoiled on Amazon in the next month or so because that sounds about right. With no hype behind it, because that's just kind of how things go nowadays. But I think it's going to be D&D, and I agree, right? We live in a world where you can get information at your fingertips because we have the internet. That makes sense, right? Would Gygax and even Wizards and stuff, TSR back in the day, if they could have gotten regular instant feedback on all of the things they had put out or done, you'd pretty much be stupid not to ask your player base. Now, you can just choose to ignore whatever they tell you and say, well, I don't listen to you. I don't think you're right. And I'll make whatever I want. And you have your prerogative to do that. The fact that you're reaching out and asking means you do want to try to honor what you think your players and your fans want. So if people are telling you that my favorite setting is Planescape and everybody tells you it's Planescape, maybe you should make Planescape as a campaign setting. Like, maybe do that. And then unfortunately I didn't really feel like there was anything super divisive to say, like, okay, people hate this, so we're going to make the game like this. Again, a lot of that stuff they talked about in there, I thought was like, this is just how you play the game, tracking your hit points, tracking DCs and spell slots and stuff. I don't love or hate doing that, but that's how you play the game, and I love the game. Therefore, by proxy, I love it. But I don't know. I can't really get a good vibe, or not a good or bad. I can't really understand what the full purpose of this is. I will recommend that if you are thinking about it, take the time. I probably took a little bit longer than you would because I was narrating everything out loud. Whereas if I was just doing it myself, I probably would have clicked through things a lot faster. I did think it was interesting, that end piece with the authors, though. Does this author's name on the book make you want to buy it more or less? And I wonder how much feedback they're going to get by that. And like, maybe there were other people in there that I think I recognized like the name very briefly, but I don't know who it was. But I also thought that it was interesting that Gary Gygax was on there, and since he's dead, he's not writing anything. But I guess they could like slap his name on the front cover of the book and be like, Gary Gygax's Mythic Odysseys of Theros. And then maybe people would want it. I don't know. So let me know your best guess in the comments down below. What do you think the purpose of this survey is? What are they looking for? And what are you hoping to get out of it? As a reminder, I do have a giveaway running to get yourself one of these fancy, shiny, limited edition covers of Mythic Odysseys of Theros, as well as the standard cover that runs till right before Icewind Dale Rime of the Frost Maiden comes out, so you can enter to win. There'll be a link in the description below. I wasn't originally planning on making this video. I thought about possibly doing it as a stream, but I decided to make a video instead. And like I said, I realize this isn't for everybody, but I happen to know for a fact at least 1 or 2 people at Wizards watch my videos from time to time. So maybe if they decide to sit through and watch me answer the survey, the fact that I narrate and kind of gave you the idea of why I thought things were the way they were will maybe help a little bit from my side of the internet, inform them on what I look for in Dungeons and Dragons. But anyway, go fill out the survey, let them know your thoughts. Thank you to my patrons on Patreon for continuing to join up and support the channel. And thank you to all of you who subscribed recently. 50K, just around the corner. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.